Hi everyone, my name's Anne-Marie and in this how-to guide we're going to make a gorgeous watermark effect background using one of my new seasonal cluster stamps. I'm going to be using one of the cluster stamps from the Mother's Day collection and it's the background cluster. This stamp will create a gorgeous effect with a watermark and will work with so many of your different projects. So the first thing that we need to do is add our stamp to our acrylic block. Now I'm going to be working on a stamp mat and that just gives me a surface that the stamp will stamp into. It's not too spongy and it's not too hard. If you don't have one, don't panic. You can use a stack of A4 paper, you can use your self-heal mat or a yellow pages, a telephone book, whatever you've got to hand, and it's just the kind of, it has a little bit of bounce in it. If you don't have anything like that, don't panic. You might just have to do an extra stamp on scrap paper just till your stamp is warmed up. So the first thing that we need is our scrap paper. This is a Versamark ink pad and it's the watermark stamp ink pad. And when I take the lid off, it's a translucent ink pad in colour. Mine is well loved at the moment and sometimes it can pick up a bit of colour from the stamps that you're using. Even if you've cleaned them, it can just simply change a little bit. Don't panic, it will still give you that watermark effect. So I'm going to simply make light tapping onto my stamp from the ink pad like we do normally. And then I'm going to just stamp onto my scrap paper to test the actual stamp. And that to me looks great. And that's going to work perfectly for us. So I can turn my attention to my smooth stamping card. And I'm going to start at the top of the card and stamp all over. Now, it's not classed as a repeat pattern, however, you've got the little stamps to fill in the gaps if you have any, and I think a background wants to be random sometimes, and I think this is a perfect way to get a great background. So I'm going to start off in this corner, and I'm going to go slightly over the edge. So I'm stamping it as I would anything else, and that's a good image to start with. So I'm going to keep inking up my stamp, light tapping motion, and then I can go back in, I can stamp at any angle, it doesn't have to be straight down, and then I'm going to just keep going around the card surface to build up the gorgeous background, and then I'd be able to use it for any of my projects. Now the way I've designed these stamps, because you actually get a full cluster in all of the sets, you can use them for your backgrounds, and when I say if you have gaps between the stamps, there's some smaller clusters to be able to fill those gaps in if you want. And I sometimes think it's good to have a few gaps, because also if you're covering it with different layers, you might not want to stamp the whole of the background, you might just want to stamp the corners. I do think stamping over the edge looks great because it looks like you've continued the pattern elsewhere, as so to speak. You haven't kind of just stopped. So I'm just inking up again, and then I can start concentrating on the bottom edge again. You can see I'm stamping over the edge of the paper, the cardstock, sorry, and I'm not being careful where I'm stamping, and that doesn't matter. It's just a great technique. And because it's a watermark effect, it takes a translucent look on whatever coloured cardstock you're using, and you can just build up the pattern and use parts of the stamp or all of the stamp. And I'm just going to use that section there for the edge, and that in no time at all we've created a gorgeous background for any of our layers. And that to me will, you could use it as it is, you could trim it down, you could use it in your journaling, your scrapbooking, you could just build up a gorgeous page. But because it's a watermark effect, anything you stamp over it will stamp so well. I mean, that will look great against with a black sentiment in the middle. If you stamp the Mother's Day and just add a bow, you've got the most simplest of cards with a great technique. Now, I do hope you've enjoyed watching. There's lots of how-to guides on the website, and we go from simple stamping up to stenciling and stamping and heat embossing and double colour heat embossing. So please check them all out. You can always find me on social media or on the website. All the details are below in the description on YouTube. And I would just like to say thank you so much for watching. I shall see you next time.